Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar about lookups. Thank you for joining me at slightly later the time than normal. What we're going to have a bit of a go through today is I'm going to show you in Excel how to sort of relate information together. We'll talk through the content in a moment, but if I just sort of explain how the webinar is going to run. So best way to get the most from this webinar is if you sit back, relax and watch what I'm showing you, trying to go along at the same time. It might be a little bit quick to sort of have a go with the example at the same time as me explaining, but don't worry too much because I will send you a recording of everything that I'm going through because I'm recording everything I talk to you about now. I'll also send you a cheat sheet, so a sort of effectively one piece of paper with the key points of what we've talked about, so you've got something to go back over at the end of the session and you can revisit whatever you like. One thing to mention, in addition to this webinar, we also have a blog. Can you see there, microsoft-training-course.com. Feel free to go to that. You can register for future webinars and also see recordings of past webinars as well, and there's plenty of tips on there for you to have a look at. So let's have a little bit of a look at what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to start off and we're going to talk about Vlookup, and this is all about marrying data together within Excel. So if we think about two completely separate lists, we're going to look at relating that data together, tying it up. After that, I'm going to show you Vlookup in combination with a function called match. Now this is all to, should we say, supercharge what Vlookup does. Rather than us having to manually do part of Vlookup, match, the function, will enable us to, should we say, automate part of Vlookups, how we actually put it together. So it makes life a bit easier. And then after that, I'm not going to lie, this does kick it up a little bit of a gear. I'm going to show you a function called index, which in itself is quite simple, but I'm going to combine it with match, and it sort of goes a little bit beyond what Vlookup does in terms of relating data, but it's a lot more flexible and a lot more powerful what you can do with it. It'll probably take me about 40 to 45 minutes. If you've got any questions, there is a chat window, or you should have a chat window on the webinar software. You can just type the question that you've got and I'll try my best to come up with an answer while we're talking. If it's something I struggle with, what I'll do is I'll send an email to you at the end with all of the notes, and I'll answer any questions that I've missed on that email. Look, a little bit of a plug, shameless plug, just to let you know, if you like what you see today, we can also come and do any kind of training around Excel, PowerPoint, Word, whatever it is you want, and we can come on site, bring laptops and deliver to a bespoke brief. You can find us on all of this social media down the bottom, and also reviews about our service on Trustpilot as well. We cover all of these applications. So look, Access, Excel, Outlook, Word, PowerPoint, Project, SharePoint, the list goes on. So that's a little bit about how we're going to sort of go through the webinar. So let's start and have a little bit of a look at Vlookup. Now, I've just put on screen a file. Now I will also email this file to you at the end of the session so that you can actually have a go with all of these examples I'm going to show to you without you having to retype this data. So Vlookup is all about relating information. So on the left hand side, I've got a list of effectively what I'd call transactions, sales. Now I've put in here my favorite food, curry. So I've sold an item of curry. Now on the right, I've got a price list, and in that price list, can you see I have got in here mention of curry with a price and a cost. Now what it would be nice is if I type in curry there, and because it's a computer and it's clever, it should be able to go to the price list and find the price for curry and bring it back into the price or the cost just there. And that's exactly what Vlookup does. It's all about, you're telling it something you want to try and find, you're telling it a place where you want to try and find that information, it will then go and find that information and bring it back. Now look, I'm going to bore you with the background of how it works, because easiest way to understand what Vlookup does is to talk about what we would do in this situation. rather than talk about the techie rubbish of how it actually works, let's talk about what we would do. So I want the price. So I tell you I'm looking for the price for curry. So then I would go along and look at the price list, which is over here. My eye, right, and this is what I do in my head, it's really quick, but my eye would scan down this list until it stops at the mention of curry. Now I know that I'm looking for the price, so my eye would very quickly scan across and it would find the price for curry as being 3. Now this is exactly what Vlookup does. We tell it something we're trying to find, in this case curry. We tell it a place where we're trying to find it, in this case the price list. Vlookup will then go every single line down. So on the first column it will go all the way down here and it will literally say every single line, are you curry, are you curry, are you curry, all the way down to when it finds it. Once it finds mention of curry, it's going to jump across to here to where the price is, and that's the price it's going to bring back. And that's the same as what we do. We look down the list, so we go one line at a time till we stop where curry is, and then we jump across to where we want to find the price, and that's the price we get. Now let's have a look at that in practice. I am going to type Vlookup longhand. I'm not going to use the function builder because, to be honest, if you type a function longhand by just going straight into the cell and typing, you end up much better off for the future. Now what you'll notice is, can you see here, if I start typing V and then L, in Excel you get something called IntelliType. Now IntelliType, can you see here, it's come up with Vlookup as an option just here. Now rather than me having to type the rest of it, I can just press tab on my keyboard and can you see it'll fill the rest of Vlookup in. Now there's 4 different things we've got to tell Vlookup, and if you see here in this, it's almost like a post-it note which appears just beneath where I've actually started doing the Vlookup. I've got one called lookup value, I've got one, can you see here, called table array, one called column index number, and one called range lookup. Now lookup value is what I am trying to find in this list. So I am telling Vlookup I'm trying to find mention of curry. After that I'm going to press comma. Now all of these things that I'm telling Vlookup are always separated by a comma. The next thing that I'm sort of expected to put in is something called a table array. So we've told it what we're looking for, and that's the lookup value. Table array is where am I trying to find mention of curry. Now I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about what you would highlight for a table array because this dramatically affects the performance of your spreadsheet. But just for now, to keep this simple, I'm going to highlight over column H to J, and I will come back in a little while and tell you why that can be both good and that can be both also bad at the same time. So I'm going to drag over that because I want to find curry within the price list. So I'm going to type comma in here and it jumps to the next thing, and this is called column index number. Now column index number is, so far we've told it we're looking for curry. It's going to go down this first column and it's going to stop where curry is just here. Now column index number is once it's found curry, we want it to go across to the second column. Can you see the first column of the list we've highlighted is item, the second column of the list is price, so we want column 2. So I just press number 2 just there. Now following that, put another comma in. It goes to this one here called range lookup. Now range lookup it's effectively like a light switch. You've got 2 ways you can use Vlookup. You've got one called an approximate match, which is true, and you've got one called an exact match, which is false. Now we want an exact match, which is the word false in here. Now we can, if we want to, instead of doing false, we could in there type 0. 0 is the same as false from the point of view of Excel understanding true and false. Now why do we want to go for 0 or false? We want to find something which exactly matches to curry, or we want to find something which exactly matches to beer or grapes or apple. Approximate match is not where it's going to find a match. For instance, if you're looking for beer and in your price list you've got an item called beers or lager beer, or if you're looking for apple and there is an item in your list called cooking apple, it's not about that. It's about finding numeric values in a list of other numbers where there is not an exact match. So there is a very, very small use case for that, generally speaking. So rule of thumb, 0 or the word false on the end. If you don't put that, you can end up with some very, very screwy results. Now following that, enter on my keyboard, and can you see there, for curry, it's brought back the price of 3. Now, because it's a formula, if I now drag this formula down, can you see it comes up saying NA, NA, NA. NA means non-applicable, cannot find a match. Now at the moment, the reason why it's saying NA is because on this line here, it's expecting to find something in here to then go and search this list by, but there's nothing in there. So NA in this case means there's nothing to go and try and find. But if I try and type in here apple or pear, can you see it finds the appropriate match from the price list? Now NA can also mean something completely different. If I now put in here, you can tell from this I like curry, but if I put in tikka, can you see tikka comes up saying NA? Because tikka isn't in the price list. So NA, non-applicable, can be useful by itself because NA is telling me that we're trying to find something in a transaction list that doesn't occur in the price list. So that can be useful information to me anyway. So NAs are not always a problem. They're sometimes actually an opportunity to actually improve and clean up your data. So that is a rough idea of Vlookup. Let's just go back to the formula though. Let's have a little bit of a look at this just to recap. So we tell it something that we're looking for. That is our lookup value. We tell it somewhere where we're trying to find that information. That is the table array. Now, this is something that I didn't really make a lot of light of. The piece of information that we're trying to find, in this case curry, needs to be in the first column of the list that we're trying to find it within. So here, if I just do a bit of color coding, we're looking for curry. Well, Vlookup's only going to look down that first column of the list that I've highlighted as my table array. So if item was here, it wouldn't find it if it was one column over. And in a bit, we're going to look at index and match. And this is why I'm going to show you this, because you can actually change the column that you want to look for your information based on using those two functions. But keeping on with the Vlookup, what we're trying to find, where we're trying to find it, once it finds a match, column index number tells it to move across however many columns to the right from the match, and then that's the piece of information that it will bring back. Right, couple of things to make you aware of about this. First thing, the identifying information for what you're trying to find needs to be the first column of the list that you're highlighting. The next thing, let's talk about duplicates. Okay, so duplicates. I've got curry there, which has brought back 3. Now I'm going to purposefully duplicate the item curry. So I'm going to overtype pear with curry just here. Now look what's happened to the price for curry just there. Can you see curry results in a price of 4 now? Because if we look down our list, and this is what Vlookup's doing, is it curry? No. Is it curry? Yes. Can you see the first time it finds a match to the word curry, that's the one we get. Vlookup doesn't continue on to find any other instances of curry. It just stops the first time it finds a match. So here's a big thing about Vlookup. If you have duplicated items in your list, the order that your list is within dramatically affects the result you're going to get. So if we take, for instance, the price, if I sort the price ascending, so can you see the cheapest curry is first, and then the next curry, so the more expensive curry, can you see is second? Look at the price I get now. So can you see it's pulling back the price as being 3? If I reorder the list so the most expensive price is at the top, can you see the curry with the biggest price, the largest price is first, and you'll see the price I get for the curry coming through here, that's the price I get, the most expensive price. So duplicates, it's not really designed to handle duplicates. You've just got to be aware that if you've duplicated items, you've got to sort your list appropriately to kind of cope with those duplicates. Another thing to mention about VLOOKUP. VLOOKUps are very, very intensive on the computer processor. And let me explain why, and this is going to do your head in when I talk to you about how this works. So going back to my example, I said to you, we're looking for curry, and we're looking for it within this price list. And remember, I highlighted, can you see H to J, right? So this is what VLOOKUP's got to do to find the price for curry. Starting in this first cell, it's going to say, are you curry? And then it's going to go down a row, are you curry? Are you curry? All the way down, until it finds the first match to curry. Now, if it finds a match, brilliant. That's absolutely fine, and it'll stop and it'll bring the price back. But let's talk about these NA values here. Now, because I have highlighted the entire column for my lookup value, what VLOOKUP's got to do to figure out those NAs, it's had to go all the way down to the bottom of the spreadsheet looking for a match to curry, and in Excel 2007 file format onwards, that is more than 1 million rows. So if you have highlighted in your VLOOKUP the entire columns all the way down to the bottom, this can be like making Excel run a marathon to actually just do something which should really be a short jog. Because yes, this method here, dragging over, can be good because if we add more items beneath the list, it will pick them up. So look, if I type in here tikka and put the price as being, I don't know, 8 as an example, can you see it pulls the price back for tikka? But these NAs, that is 1, 2, 3, 4 million rows. Well, it's actually a bit more than that, but let's just to make the maths easier, Excel has had to check 4 million individual rows for can I find pair, can I find a blank, can I find a blank. And if you've got a lot of these, that can result in spreadsheets taking forever to open and absolutely ages to refresh. So when we come on to highlighting this, it's still going to be quite intensive what it's got to do, because it's still got to check every single line of what you highlight. But instead of grabbing the entire columns like so, what can make more sense for the table array is to highlight an area that is your list, and then perhaps, can you see, go a little bit further than you need to go. The only thing you've got to do if you do that is, because this is a relative range, you've got to then make sure that you dollar off what you've highlighted. Now, a quick way, just in case you're unaware of this, to dollar these off would be to highlight either side of the colon like so in the range that you want to dollar off, and then we press F4 on the keyboard. Now, look, I'm going to assume you're happy with the dollar symbol, but just in case you're not, this is very much a quick idea. The dollar symbol is all about, it's almost like applying glue to that part of the formula. So no matter where we drag this formula down there, it will always stay fixed on this area here. It will never move away from it. But if I now drag that down, the end result is the same, but the difference here is these NAs have only had to check, in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rows. So that's, 32 rows it's had to check in total rather than 4 million to get those NAs. So the performance is far, far more, should we say it's more efficient when we've got larger sets of data. So much more better for the performance point of view. Files open quicker, they save quicker, etc. Right, so that is very much a rough idea of VLOOKUP. But let's talk about something that is a bit of a pain in the backside when it comes to VLOOKUP. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a deletion. I'm going to get rid of my VLOOKUP, and let's talk about something which can be a bit of a bane of people's lives. Now, I've got cost and price in my list, and I want it for curry, for apple, for pear, for tikka, bring back the cost, bring back the price from this price list. So I'm just going to do a VLOOKUP for my cost. So I'm going to go along and do, can you see here, curry, comma, table array is going to be my list, and whichever way you want to go for, this way or you highlight over like this if you want to be a bit more efficient. Make sure we dollar this off. And it's this part of the formula which makes VLOOKUP a bit of a pain in the neck when you need to pull through more than one piece of information from the list, because I want to pull back both the cost and the price. Now, because we have to statically define the column index number, I have to sit there and physically say to myself, well, cost in the price list is column 1, 2, 3. So I physically have to type in here 3. That's static. I have to tell VLOOKUP that it's the third column. So this isn't something at the moment which I can kind of do programmatically or slickly, and it means that I finish this VLOOKUP, brings the cost through, you know, I drag this one down, happy days, it works out. But now, because I've got to physically tell it what column we want to bring through, I've now got to do the same one again for the price. So look, drag over this, you know, dollar it off, comma, price is column 1, then 2. So I put in number 2 just there, because that at the moment is a human input, 2, 3, 4, whatever the column, you know, index number is going across, we've got to tell VLOOKUP. Now I've only had to do 2 there, so it's not really a great deal of a problem for me, but sometimes you need to pull 50 columns worth of data through, you know, from different sheets, etc. This becomes a real pain. Right, so how can we solve this problem? I'm going to talk about a function now called match. Now match is a function, let me see if I can get this out right. Match is a function where you can tell it something that you're trying to find in either a horizontal or a vertical list. And when I say list, I'm talking about one row or one column of data. And what match will do is it will tell you the relative position of that piece of information in that horizontal or vertical row. So if I show you an example of what I mean by this, if I say I'm trying to find the word curry in this list here, can you see these items that I've highlighted? Match will tell me that curry is not position 1, not position 2, but it's position 3. So this can be quite good for ranking, effectively telling me if you've got a list in order of like monetary values, is that person in place 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5? It tells you the relative position in a list of that particular item. Let's talk about it on a row, right? This is exactly what we do when we try to find out what the column index number is for our VLOOKUP. So in this case, when I was doing VLOOKUP, I wanted to know for the cost column which position in this section here was cost. And this is exactly what match can do. So we talked about it vertically, but this could also be horizontally. So I want cost. Cost is position not 1, not 2, but 3. So match is a function that we can effectively insert into the column index number of the VLOOKUP to make VLOOKUP work as what's called a matrix lookup. Because at the moment VLOOKUP only looks down a list and then we physically tell it to go across. Well, when we do a matrix lookup, we can tell VLOOKUP we want to look down this column, but then we can get VLOOKUP with the aid of match to scoot across to the appropriate column to pull the data back. Now I'll show you match with VLOOKUP in a minute, but just let me show you match on its own. So equals match. Now match has 3 things we've got to tell it. Match has something called lookup value, something called lookup array, and something called match type, and it's very similar to VLOOKUP. So lookup value is, I'm going to go for the example we're going to use with VLOOKUP for consistency. I'm going to say lookup value is the fact I'm looking for cost, comma. Now lookup array, in this case, because I want to find the relative position of the word cost in the headings along the top, lookup value is this section here, and I'm going to drag over that like so. Now I'm going to dollar this off, so I'm going to press F4 on my keyboard, because once I've done this, I'm going to pull this across and I want to work out the relative position of price. Now, third thing we tell it is this thing here called match type. Now, match type for me is going to be 0 because I want an exact match, but you have also got 1 or -1, which allows you to do a less than or a greater than, and that's useful if you're trying to find values within a list of numbers. But I'm going to go for 0 just here. If I now close the bracket, once I'm ready, press enter, can you see now match is telling me, and you see there's the match function in the formula bar at the top, match is telling me the relative position of the word cost in, can you see the horizontal set of headings in my price list? And if I drag this across, can you see that's telling me the relative position of the word price in those headings going across? So that's one piece of the puzzle we need. Now effectively, like a Russian doll, bigger doll, then smaller doll still, we want to insert the match function into the Vlookup so that rather than us having to go 1, 2, 3 or 1, 2, match will do that for us. Now this relies on a really good understanding of the dollar symbol in Excel. And I'll talk through this a little bit, but I have to assume a certain level of knowledge with this, otherwise I'll run out of time explaining every single thing in mega detail. But let me just adjust my file a bit. So look, here we go, equals Vlookup. Now, first thing you've got to think about a little bit differently here is when I click onto the lookup value, I've got to think about, because the whole point of this is I'm going to do one Vlookup which I can drag both across and down. Yeah, so I'm only going to do my Vlookup once. So what I've got to do here is I've got to dollar off my formula a little bit differently. So before I didn't dollar it off. So what I do here is I press the F4 key once, twice, 3 times. So the reason why I'm doing that, I want to make it so that when I pull this across to the price column, it's still going to look at column A because I've put a dollar in front of the A. But when I drag it down a row, I want it to look at the apple, which is on row 6, row 7, row 8, row 9, going forward if you want to do this for more items. So I'm locking the part of the coordinate I want to stay fixed. Following that, comma, table array, this is still going to be this area here. Can you see? The same as what we did earlier on for our Vlookup. And I'm going to dollar that off because I need that to be fixed, comma. Now, look, I'm going to share with you how I approach nesting because this is putting one function within another. Personally, when I put a function within a function, I put some spaces in. And what I would do, because column index number is where I would previously for cost type 3, but this time I am going to do a match function. Now, I never try and write a function left to right. I always build it outside in or inside out. So what I mean by this, I'm going to type match, open and close the brackets for match, put some spaces in there, and I'm going to make sure I finish the Vlookup function. So can you see I've completely finished the Vlookup function and I've put my spaces in. Can you see, to give myself a little bit of a separation? Excel won't moan at you for this. If you put your spaces in there, it can make it a bit easier to see what the crack is. So now I know I've got my Vlookup right, the brackets are correct. I'm going to click into my match. So can you see it gives me my post-it note for, how I'm going to do my match. So lookup value is, in this case, I need to find out where the word cost is within here. So my lookup value is the word cost. Now I've got to dollar this off in such a way that when I drag this formula down, it stays on the cost heading, but when I pull it across, it's going to move along to the price. So I press my F4 key, and just to make sure you're happy with this, if I keep on pressing my F4 key, can you see it cycles through the different positions of the dollars? But what I want to aim for is no dollar in front of the C because I want it to move across to the price, but I want to have a dollar in front of the 4 because when I drag it down, I want it to stay fixed on the word cost. So that's my lookup value, comma. Lookup array. This is where am I going to try and find the word cost. This is inside my headings at the top. Now you've got to make sure that you drag over the same relative position, can you see, as the outer edges of where the VLOOKUP's looking, because that needs to be column 1 of the VLOOKUP and of the price list headers. That needs to be 2 of the VLOOKUP and the price list headers, and same with the cost being 3. I'm now going to dollar that off with the F4 key. Following that, I've got to finish off the match. You've always got to make sure you finish the function off. So look, comma, 0. This is an exact match. So once I'm ready, if I now press enter on my keyboard, beauty of this is, it's so, I mean, I'm sad for saying this, but it's so cool what this does. If I now drag this down, can you see it's worked out the costs? If I now drag this across, can you see it's also pulled the price in? Because this is looking both across and down, because we're saying here we want to pull the curry, right, and it's going to go find curry, but we're also telling it we want to find the curry for the cost column, so it's automatically scooting across to there. So if I go back into my VLOOKUP, all of this, and let's just sort of zoom in a bit here, all of this here, the match that I've just highlighted over, that is where previously we would have said 2 or 3 or 4 for the column and statically defined it, but Excel finds it for us because we've made it dynamic. So this is looking up in 2 directions. Now again, look, let me just exaggerate this quite a lot. I'm just going to go and insert a load of columns, and I've only got so much to play with here, but I'm just going to repeat price and cost. This could simulate there being lots of information that you've got to pull from another list. If I now grab that, drag it across, can you see one VLOOKUP that I can just drag across that goes and pulls the information from the price list, provided that and that matches to, say, that and you know, the heading at the top, and it'll just work for us. So that's VLOOKUP with match. Now I'm just going to go through and reset my file a little bit, because I'm going to show you now another variation, because that's good and that's going to save us a lot of time if we're pulling a lot of data. But let's talk about a limitation of VLOOKUP. So one thing, and I didn't really kind of make too much light of this, I did mention it, but I didn't really exaggerate this problem. But I'm just going to change my list a little bit. So can you see my price list now? So I've moved my price list item column, can you see, in between my price and my cost. Well, VLOOKUP, when I do my table array, if I dragged here, VLOOKUP can only ever look down the first column of the list. So if I did my VLOOKUP here to try and find curry and highlighted this area, VLOOKUP is going to check this, all the way down this first column for the match to curry or the match to pear, etc. So in this case, we can never find price as a result of the item. So we would have to effectively drag here, and if we want to find price, we would have to start moving our list around and putting price over here. And this is very much the case why a lot of lists you see, the kind of like the unique identifier, the thing that tells me what each line is usually at the far left-hand side of the list. It's not the only reason, but quite a lot of the times that's why people structure their lists in that way, so that they can do a VLOOKUP on it. Well, that's where index comes in. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, index on its own is a bit rubbish as a function. It's fairly simplistic, but index combined with match is where it starts to get quite exciting and quite useful. So let me show you index first of all. So look, cost. This is index, and there is actually there's 2 variations of index. You've got one with, can you see, just 3 parameters, where we've got array, row number and column number, and that's what we're going to use. There's also one beneath called index with reference, row number, column number, area number. Now the second one is where if you had more than one list that you want to base this on, we're just for simplicity going to use one list, but the second one allows you to have multiple lists in different places and specify which list you're going to look up on. Effectively, when I say a list, I mean a block of data, but we're going to keep it with the simple one. Now, array, that is going to be this. Now, array is just a geeky way of saying list of data. So that's my array. Now, I'm not going to dollar this off because I'm just going to do the one index, but when we actually come to do this ourselves, I will dollar this off. The second thing is we've got one there called row number. Now, row number this is as simple as it gets. I want to find the price for curry, so row number is going to be row 1, 2, 3. So I would say 3, right? So can you see at the moment I'm statically defining what the row number is, comma. Column number, I want the cost for column. So cost is 1, 2, 3 across. So I would say 3. So to find from that array the cost for curry, I've got to go down to row 3, across to column 3. And can you see there? 2, 2. There you go. So look, do you see what I mean? Index on its own is a bit rubbish. But let's go back a step. What does match do? Match is all about finding an item, either the curry in the vertical list or the word cost in the horizontal list, the relative position. And what does index need? Index wants the position either across or down of what it is we're looking for. So, I mean, I'm not going to lie, this does get a bit big in terms of the function size if you use a match inside an index. But what this means is Vlookup only ever looks down the first column, but because we can specify what the match is doing in, say, the row number, and you could also do the column number as well, well, we can change the column that we're looking up based on, which means I don't have to change the structure of the list. So look, just for now, I'm going to do a simple example of this. So equals index, I'm going to drag over this like so, and I'm going to dollar that off. Because I want to lock this off. I don't want that to move because when I drag it down, I want it to continue looking at that area. Now, comma, row number is the first thing we're going to tell it. Now, I'm definitely going to use a match for this because I need to find where curry is inside of this list here. So I'm going to do match, open and close bracket. Now, remember what I said to you when I did my VLOOKUP, when I'm putting a function in a function, I do a bit of spacing out. And I also build effectively outside in or inside out. I get the main thing finished, so I'm going to finish my my index even before I start tackling my match. So watch here, comma, just here, like this, and I am going to say, and I'm going to do this statically, right? I want the cost column, which is column 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to type 3 in there. Close that off. Now, I'll show you in a bit, you can replace that 3 with a match if you like. It's entirely up to you. You can replace that with a match and we will have a look at that. But let's just deal with the match here. So look, lookup value is what I'm trying to find. That is my curry, just there, comma. Lookup array is where I'm trying to find this. So lookup array in this case is, I'm going to drag over here like this, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to press F4 on my keyboard because I want that to be a static, area that I'm looking for, and comma, because I've got to finish the function, I want an exact match, so I go for 0 just in there. So I've been able now to actually completely short circuit what a VLOOKUP wouldn't be able to do in this case, is actually change the column that I'm looking for something based on. So if I now press enter, can you see it's looking for, curry within there, and it's scooted across to the column I want to go for. If I drag that down, can you see it will work? Now I can do exactly the same for price. So look, let's do this. Equals index, right? Array is going to be this area here, and it becomes more useful in this one because this is the one where price is to the left of the lookup area. I'm going to dollar that off, comma, row number is going to be a match. Open and close that. So I want to find the price, so I'm going to do comma 1 because it's the first column I want to bring back. Can you see there, column number? Close my bracket off. And again, look, this is my personal preference. I then go back into the match because this way you always get the number of brackets right. So lookup value is, I am looking for curry, comma, and I'm looking for it, can you see here in this column here? And this is what I couldn't do with the VLOOKUP before. So I'm going to dollar that off, and I'm going to say comma 0 because I want an exact match to that. So once I'm ready, if I now press enter, can you see it's found 4 for curry? If I now drag that down, can you see it works for me? So don't get me wrong, it's a little bit more of a complicated formula than VLOOKUP. Not much more in this case, but what this gives you the advantage of is it doesn't matter where this is. This could be at the end, it could be at the start. We've got that complete flexibility of where that lookup value is going to be. Now look, just to ramp it up a little bit of a gear, I'm just going to move this over so we've got a bit more space to work with. So I'm going to now do an index with 2 matches, and I've not sort of mentioned any questions because up to now there's not really been any questions coming through, and I've seen there's just been 1 or 2 come through. I will come on to those in a moment, but let's just have a look at this index match situation. So look here, equals index. So look, array is going to be this area here, so I'm going to drag over. I must dollar that off because I'm going to do this in such a way that I want to be able to drag it down and across in the same way that when we did the VLOOKUP with the match, that it'll just pull the information back. Comma. I'm going to do my match for my row. I'm going to open and close those brackets. Comma. I'm going to do my match for my column. And I'm going to close the bracket, can you see there, for my index. So can you see I've finished that off. Now look as well, personally, when I'm doing this, I would usually, can you see, put some spaces in here, and it's a daft thing, but I think it helps so much to kind of see that separation, and I use that in any function where I'm nesting. So click outside that match. This tells me, can you see that's the row number of the index? So I'm in this match got to work out where the row number is. So I'm going to click into there. Lookup value is going to be the curry. Now I've got to dollar this off in such a way that it stays fixed on the curry, but it's allowed to go down a row. So I've got $A5, comma. Lookup value is where are you going to find the curry? So that is going to be here. So this is us nominating, and this is the bit we couldn't do with the VLOOKUP, but this is us nominating the column that I want to base the lookup on. Dollar that off because I want that to be fixed, comma. I want an exact match. So that is me, this bit here is me sorting out, finding the row number for curry to insert back into the match. Now to make this super clever, I'm now going to work out, can you see here, the column number, which is this match just here. And it's quite useful. Can you see if you click inside and outside of the functions, it kind of gives you where you are in the function by making it bold. I find that really useful myself. So look, click into here. Lookup value in this case is the fact that I'm looking for cost. Now I've got to dollar this off in such a way that it stays fixed onto row 4, but is allowed to go to D to E, so on and so forth, comma. Lookup value is, can you see just over here, this is my, can you see my headings just along here. Now I must dollar this off because this is me trying to find cost in a relative position going across in the same way I did with the VLOOKUP earlier on with the match, comma. 0 on my keyboard because I want an exact match. Now, beauty of this is if I now press enter, drag that formula down, drag that formula across, it's done the matrix lookup, so it's worked out based on the headings, the appropriate column. It's done the rows as well, so it's gone both down the list and it's gone across, but I've not had to have my item as the first column. And yes, it is a bit of a gobful. That formula is long. Yeah, there's a lot of information there and it's a lot more complicated than the VLOOKUP, but I've not had to destroy the original format of my list to find that information. So look, I'm going to send you this recording so you can run back through this. I'm also going to send you a cheat sheet which goes through in effectively not in every single detail, but the text of the rough idea of how the index and the match work together and what all of the parameters are, and a few little bits that are pitfalls in there as well, so you can print that off and you've got that by your side. But I'm just going to just have a quick look at some questions that have come in that people have mentioned towards the end. So one question that's come in is, with the VLOOKUP and the index and match, does the data need to be in the same sheet? Absolutely not. That price list could have been in a different tab. That price list could have been in a different workbook entirely. It just boils down to when you actually go to highlight if it's in the index, your array, or if it's in your VLOOKUP, your table array. It's just a matter of going to the sheet, grabbing over the data, or going to the workbook and grabbing over the data. So no, it doesn't have to be in separate, in the same, place. I've just done this so it's easy for me to talk about it. Let's have another little bit of a look down the list, see if there's anything else I can answer. Right, another question. Spaces, right? This is a very common thing that can be a pain. Watch, and this tricks VLOOKUPs and also index match. Spaces in a list can cause so many issues, and there are a lot of other functions that this causes issues for. So let me show you what I mean. I'm just going to resize my spreadsheet a little bit. So the question is, what happens if, let's just take on my example curry, someone's typed space at the end of it. Now I'm going to do a little bit of changing of the format of my list so you can see this, and I'm going to exaggerate this on some of these so you can see what I mean. So can you see here in the items that I'm looking up, there's a space at the end, but in the list that I'm looking up based on, can you see there's no spaces? So look, watch here. This is something that causes so many hassles. If I do VLOOKUP, right, and I'll do VLOOKUP because it's simpler. And here's my table array, drag over that. And I say, look, I want to bring back my cost, which is column 3. So this is what I was doing before. Press enter. Can you see it comes up saying NA? Now, if I drag that down, right, just because I've been bodging around with this, the only one that's going to come up with a match in this case is the one called Tika. Reason why these don't come up with a match is because curry with a space at the end of it does not match to curry without a space at the end of it. Now let me show you a little function. Very, very simple function, but this is so useful. Let's just put my name in here, and I'm going to exaggerate it with a load of spaces. So what I've got is a function which is called trim. Now trim is equals trim, open bracket, click on the cell that's got text in it which has got, misbehaving spaces, close bracket. If I now press enter, what that's done, can you see it's removed any leading or any trailing spaces from my name? This is really good for data cleansing as well, but can you see it's also reduced the amount of spaces in between each word to 1? So, no matter what's going on, can you see there, the result of the function is, can you see it's tidied my name up quite a bit? So let's just apply that to the VLOOKUP. I would get into this habit. This is a really good habit to do. While you're doing your VLOOKUP or your match or your index, whatever it is, anything where, can you see you've got your lookup value, just do trim, open brackets, close bracket at the end. And what that's going to do, and look, you can do your spacing as well, can make it a bit easier to see what the crack is. But that trim is going to remove the space off the end or the space off the start, so that rather than looking for curry with a load of spaces at the end, it's going to look at curry with no spaces. So now if I press enter, all of the ones that were kind of scuppered, so can you see apple and curry that were scuppered by the spaces, doesn't matter. And same, look, can you see here, if I just put a load of spaces in there, doesn't cause a problem. Because a very big thing people do is they type, hit the space at the end because they're so used to writing an email, and then it just bodges VLOOKUP up. So look, I'm sorry I've waffled on a bit. We've gone a bit longer than the sort of the 40-45 minutes I kind of advertised this for. Appreciate everyone sort of sticking with me till the bitter end. I will upload this recording. It'll probably take an hour or so, so it won't come through to you straight away. I'll also send you the cheat sheet as well, and keep your eyes peeled for any more webinars we put on. At the end of this webinar, you'll be asked to fill a feedback form in. Please do. I want whether it was good or bad, but also in there, can you make a note that there is one question: is there anything else you want me to cover in another webinar? So it's your opportunity to tell me what you would be interested in for future webinars. And I do read that, and that's kind of why I've done this webinar, because this is something people have asked me to cover, you know, when they attended other webinars. So look, I really appreciate your time, and hope to see you on another webinar. If you've got any questions or need any on-site training, do get in touch. Have a really good evening. Bye now.